as you can see, as you know, some of our attendees can already tell, I'm Maddie. I'm Kirsten's daughter. She was supposed to be here tonight with this lovely group of people, but literally 1 hour ago, she learned that she had the ability to get her COVID vaccine. So she is about an hour away right now getting her shot, which is awesome. We are so pumped, but I am going to be here tonight. So hi, everybody. Thank you for coming back to the books. Yes, hi, thank you. And yay for vaccines. We're very, very, very excited. Without further ado, I am going to introduce our moderator tonight, Josh Berk, who is a partner with us for the Lehigh Valley Book Festival. He is the director of the Bethlehem Area Public Library, and he is an author of multiple middle grade books, but his most recent is Camp Murderface, which is a delightfully creepy middle grade that I suggest everybody read. So please, without further ado, I'm going to hand it right over to Josh, and I hope everyone has a great session tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
Hey, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you for having us. Let's just like take a moment and like just be happy that Kirsten's getting her COVID vaccine. That's like exciting news. This is my second big Zoom event of the day. Earlier today, I was on PBS, the local PBS, and it was me and the woman who was running a COVID clinic at Lehigh Valley Hospital. And I was talking about what the library is doing, and she was like, I'm like, let's let her talk. Like, this woman is really working hard. And I'm like, well, we have story time on Zoom. Like we're adapting, but that lady's like saving the world. So anyway, I'm thrilled to be here. And it's been so fun to work with Maddie and Kirsten with the Lehigh Valley Book Festival. Of course, when we envisioned it, it was an in-person event. And now that it's virtual, it's a little, we're missing seeing all of you in person, but we're also thrilled that we're able to connect with authors far and wide. We do have a great, very impressive number of authors here in the Lehigh Valley, truly remarkable, but it's super fun also to be bringing in some of our friends from the New York area. We have Gae Polisner and Polisner. I think I practiced.
It was close. It was good enough.
Close enough? Okay. And also joining us from New York is Michael Buckley.
Guys.
And then joining us from all the way from Lower Nazareth is David Lubar, one of our local friends and favorites. So, the title of this presentation is Fascinating Tales to Tell. So you just have to be fascinating. That's all you have to do, and share your tales with us. I know you all have such interesting catalogs and so many interesting books that you've written and published and people know you for. I was chatting with Gae earlier, and it just caught my eye that she published a book last year that mentioned Jack Kerouac in the title. And I just was one of those kids who grew up kind of obsessed with the Beat Generation and reading Kerouac. So I haven't had a chance to read that book yet, but I'm just curious what brought you to Kerouac and what brought what that book's about, and just this is purely for me. Just fill me in on that title and let me know what it's all about.
So it's funny because I moderated an event last night, and you can always tell the age of the people you're dealing with by whether they know who Kerouac even is anymore and whether they can pronounce his name. And she couldn't, and she didn't last night, and it's pretty shocking. But actually, Jack Kerouac is Dead to Me, which is my newest upper YA title, is the only book I've ever written from a title. And what happened was in my I wish it was something more intellectual than that, but in my first book that came out, The Pull of Gravity, there was a whole of Mice and Men theme running through the book. The kids read of Mice and Men aloud, and they're trying to deliver a rare first edition copy somewhere. And at the time the book came out, it didn't get a lot of publicity. And really what saved it is that because it had that of Mice and Men tie-in, a lot of educators were interested in the book, and thank goodness that saved it and kind of put me on enough of a map to get a second book published. And so when I was thinking about my next book to write, I started joking that my thing would be that I would tie classic authors into my stories. And so one morning I woke up with the title Jack Kerouac is Dead to Me in my head. and I wrote an entire novel about it. But really, the main character's mother in the story is suffering from dissociative disorder, and she actually hallucinates that Jack Kerouac is alive, and she writes love letters to him. So hence that title.
I mean, starting from a title is not a unheard of plot generation idea. I know some authors do that sort of intentionally. Was Kerouac someone that you grew up reading and had an affinity for, or?
I had definitely read him. I don't think I had a huge affinity for him, but he actually lived one town over from me for some period of time. And so he's somewhat of a famous figure around here because there's still a bar called Gunther's Tap Room in Northport, New York, where he frequented, and it's got all sorts of Kerouac memorabilia. And there are 3 different houses in Northport, New York, where he lived. And so there is some connection to this part of Long Island where I live and Kerouac. And the more that I wrote about him, the more obsessed I did become with him, I think more as a human being than even a writer. So interesting fella, as they say.
He did drive through Allentown. I mean, that's and on the road. He didn't stop. He didn't stop, but it's probably smart. That's our local connection to Kerouac. He just drove through. It mentions it in the book. I remember checking the book out of the library, the Bethlehem Library, but Allentown's one town over, and someone had underlined the word Allentown, and I was like, "Yeah, this is our connection to Kerouac." So, that's cool. And so then I'm gonna ask Michael a question and David, and then we'll have you talk about your new title as well. So I think I know a lot of folks know Michael from the Sisters Grimm series. Before I was a library director, I was a children's book author. I was also a children's book author. I was a children's book librarian before I was a library director. And so I was working in a children's library at a time where, every day someone would ask me for one of your titles. So they were really a phenomenal success and such a cool series. The new title is, tell me if it's a series or if it's a one-off, or what Finn and the Time Traveling Pajamas, what readers can expect from that.
Well, it's the second in a series. I've got it right here, conveniently. Finn and the Time Traveling Pajamas is the sequel to
Finniverse.
Finn and the Intergalactic Lunchbox. I've written 2 pretty successful middle grade series. One was the Sisters Grimm, one was Nerds, and each of those books I tried to write in a very different kind of voice. I think the Sisters Grimm is a tad bit more literary than Nerds, which is more along the lines of like Mel Brooks style humor. And so this new book is sort of an effort to sort of blend those 2 voices to try and try to do something different. It's about a kid who gets caught up in some otherworldly adventures over and over and over. In the first book, he has a lunchbox that opens wormholes to other universes, and he can travel through space, and unfortunately, things from space can also come out of the lunchbox. So that's the first problem. And then in the sequel, he is given a pair of pajamas that happen to be a time machine, and he is sent on a mission to try and stop a monster that's trying to destroy the universe. Unfortunately, he gets a tear in the pajamas, and they don't work the way they're supposed to. So that's what happens in this one. And then the third one, the final one, comes out next year, and it's called Finn and the Subatomic Slip and Slide. And I've had a lot of fun with these. They're science fiction novels, but I'm trying to do something like clever. I mean, I was really inspired by The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and read that and really wanted to write something that really would resonate with middle graders. I know a lot of high school kids discover that book, but there really wasn't much out there for 8 to 12. So I would say that was the biggest inspiration.
When Douglas Adams sort of pitched that book, I think I remember reading a quote where he said, you know, it was his desire to combine science fiction and comedy, and thus invent a new way to enter poverty or something like that, because he just had such a hard time selling it in the early days, but obviously was a great success. And why not, right? That's a great marriage. There's plenty of opportunities to combine humor and that fantastical world. That's great. So David has, I tried to do a count, David's number of titles. We don't bother to count anymore.
Maybe 50 books, 400 short stories. I have no hobbies.
You do have hobbies. You play Pokemon Go. I see you outside the library.
That's true.
David's local to me here in Bethlehem, and we'll see him outside catching Pokemon on the plaza. And I always say, look, it's David Lubar, the children's
I should
librarian.
have said I have no friends. But.
Well, David's also a very, very funny author. I believe it was Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie that I read John Green tweeted about, saying it should be considered a form of exercise because you laugh so hard that your stomach hurts after reading it, which is like a pretty great tweet, and also how I like to exercise personally. So, I don't know. Just tell us a little bit about it and how it came to you. And
with all due respect to this marvelous question, when
yes.
I heard Gae talk about titles, I thought of something else that I would love to
do it.
My brain has an app that turns words into puns all the time, and I don't try, it just happens, and it's really not pleasant for anybody in earshot. But one time I was sitting in my office and the word punished floated through my mind, and I realized that could be someone who's forced to speak in puns, which would be a true punishment because nobody likes puns. Oh, everybody likes puns, but they pretend they don't and they groan. So I started a book from a title about a boy who he's running amok in the library, runs into a man, is very rude with him, and the man blows dust off a book and he's cursed. Any sentence he says, a pun comes out. And the only way to lift the curse is to do 3 quests to find palindromes and then anagrams and then oxymorons. And so that book was fairly popular. And then many years later, the word numbed ran through my mind. And I thought, wait a minute, that could be the same kids losing their math skills. And I was really apprehensive about writing about math, but I love math, but I didn't know if I could make it interesting. So I wrote a test chapter where they're locked in the mathatorium and they have to add the numbers from 1 to 100, and they only have 2 minutes to do it. And they discover that 99 plus 1, 98 plus 2, and so on. So they figure it out, and I thought, okay, this will work. And I wrote the book, and now I'm done talking. Punished and numbed.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good, that makes me want to pick those up again. That's I didn't realize that's where that began. That's really cool. Gae, did your new book come from a title, or where did 7 Clues to Home come from?
First of all, I just want to say, because 7 Clues to Home is a very serious book for the most part, too, that I'm really funny. And that my 2022 middle grade that comes out April 5th, 2022, called Consider the Octopus, which is also co-written with my friend Nora Rowley Baskin, is hilarious. It's actually a comedy of errors farce. But 7 Clues to Home actually sold to the publisher as Finding Joy. And it's my debut middle grade. All my other books are young adult. And it centers on a scavenger hunt. There are 2 main characters, Lucas and Joy. And Lucas's chapters start the year before when he's setting up Joy's birthday scavenger hunt for her 12th birthday. And then Joy's chapters open on her 13th birthday when she decides for the first time to open the first clue he left her because he died right after he left the clue for her. So you know from the outset that Lucas has died, so that it isn't a story where you suddenly have that happen at the end and that's how the story ends. You actually know at the outset. And it's a story about how Joy comes to grips with healing and moving on with her life after losing him. It just got nominated for a Keystone.
KSRA?
Yeah, the KSRA Book Award. So I'm not nominated as a finalist, I guess, it's a finalist. So that's very cool because it came out in June. Kerouac came out in April, 3 weeks after the pandemic hit. And then Seven Clues came out in June. And so it's been a little bit rough, trying to get the titles out there. But Seven Clues, you asked about the title. It started, the sold title was Finding Joy. And I was staring at myself in the bathroom mirror after the 2016 election, thinking to myself, how am I going to ever find joy again? And then I thought, oh, that would be a cute title for a book, Finding Joy. So in that regard, it did start from the title, but I had been wanting to write a book that somehow centered around a scavenger hunt. And so that idea was already brewing and the two came together. And Nora and I had already been collaborating on something, and I asked her if she wanted to write one of the voices with me. So it's dual POV.
Cool.
I think David also shouted out a bunch of stuff that night, but none of it made a book title on the night of the 2016 election. I think that probably is probably for the better.
No, I just rage walked.
How did you find collaborating? People ask me all the time because my recent series is co-written with my friend Sandra Mitchell. So I found it to be a really enjoyable experience, but a lot of writers and readers wonder how that process works.
It has been both for us. It has been lovely and enjoyable and fabulous and really keeps you on track because we pass chapters back and forth. So I get mine done, so she's ready to go. And so from that perspective, it's been really helpful. I found it, especially after the election, very helpful because I was so distraught and then pulled in so many directions with doing other activism stuff that I felt like I lost my writing self, and the collaboration really helped in that regard. And it can be really challenging creatively. And we have had some very, very big fights and moments where we've said, I'm not working with you anymore. And then we have, 150 pages and we stare at it and then we go, all right, we won't like each other, but we'll finish the book. So it's been a little of both, but Consider the Octopus, which comes out in 2022, is our second published collaboration and our fourth effort together. So we've done a lot of writing together.
That's great. Michael, have you found it challenging to write in this past year? Or do you have a lot of projects on the burner? Or?
You know what? Oddly enough, I've had an incredibly productive year. I don't know how it happened. I mean, the first Finn book literally came out the day every bookstore in the country closed. So it sort of floundered in oblivion for a while, and I'm really excited that people are starting to find it finally, because the second one came out, and I think Delacorte has done a really great job of letting people know it's out there. This is like part of my this virtual book tour I'm doing, and I would have to I'm kind of stunned at the response I'm getting, so I'm really happy about that. Yeah, I wound up doing a lot of stuff. I finished the third Finn book. I wrote something for Audible that did really, really well. It's called The Weirdies. It's kind of like the Addams Family a little bit, and they hired Kate Winslet to be the narrator.
Wow.
So if you guys have Audible accounts, it's free. You can listen to it. That was a huge, really fun experience that I was not expecting. There's a couple things I've got in development television wise, so that's been keeping me really busy. And I've always got about 3 or 4 first chapters of novels sitting staring at me. But yeah, I tried to use the time. I don't know. It was unusually quiet in Brooklyn. So I took advantage of it. Yeah.
I think people are always real curious when you mention TV. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Or
I swear if I told you, it would go away in the morning.
oh, okay. I know
There,
that is.
there is something, brewing with one of the series I've written that I hope I can announce one of these days soon. But these things that come and go, as you guys know, and like anything, they love you today and then they forget who you are tomorrow. So
David Levithan calls that the lighthouse phenomenon, that the light's on you and then, huh?
yeah, it's you get a lot of like, we want to be in the Michael Buckley business. And then they won't come and buy anything. So it's kind of like that, like the saddest Starbucks. But when I first started doing this, it used to drive me crazy, but now I'm so used to it that I just kind of laugh. When it goes away, I'm like, well, I figured that would happen. But I'm hopeful. I think fans of this one series will be really happy with what they're doing if we can just get them to pull the trigger. But hopefully, yeah.
Say no more. We don't want to jinx it. We want to encourage the Michael.
It's already dead. I killed it.
It was this moment that ruined everything.
The kid's gonna need scholarships for college now.
You hear a great disturbance in the farce.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you working on, David? What do you have coming down?
Well, here's the thing. I also wanted to write Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for kids. And but in my own voice, and I wrote a book, and my publisher loved it. My editor loved it. My publisher wanted it to be turned into Wimpy Kid for like 2nd and 3rd graders with illustrations. And I said no. And so I shopped it around elsewhere, and I came back to them and said, hey, you really need to publish this because all my stuff with you is science fiction and all. And they said, okay, we'll do it your way, but it has to be a 3-book deal, which sounds great, but I didn't really want to, but I took the deal. And right before the book was going to come out, right after it had been in copy editing, my editor says, oh, marketing loves it, and they want to slap a cardboard on board like Lemony Snicket books, and they want to heavily illustrate it. Essentially, they said, no, you're screwed. We're going to put it out the way we want, not the way you want. And so I had to write 2 more books, and I wrote the 2nd one, and now I'm working reluctantly and slowly on the 3rd one, and then I'm just going to watch birds play Pokemon and do jigsaw puzzles.
I love how David worries about whether he's offending any of his publishing people.
Real diplomat. Sounds like
actually the publisher left the company. It's unclear whose decision it was, and nobody there even told me about it till I found out 6 months later.
Yeah.
So
those are always good stories.
Yeah, I'm in good shape with them.
I always love it when they tell you, you're like, oh, we're like a family here. Like, well, why did we?
Hey, young writers, if you're listening, don't listen to us. It's a great thing to do. Writing is wonderful and creative. Just do it for yourself. Find the pleasure in what you create and the people you know who are marvelous.
People are marvelous.
Publishing is a business.
Yes, it is a business. Yeah.
If it's a choice between you and the bottom line, and there's a bus coming, the bottom line won't go under the bus. Well, that really perked things up. Can I tell you something funny? Right after the election, the first story I wrote was about a boy who's annoying a groundhog, and the groundhog who's trying to see its shadow, and the groundhog bites his nose off, And the groundhog can tell whether winter's going to last longer depending on how many nostrils it gets. I'm going to be quiet for a while.
Maddie's going, what?
I just something just popped in my head, David, which is like David is one of my favorite people to hang out with. He's always makes me laugh. When I'm one of my first book events, we were at a Barnes and Noble, and one of the like a light had gone out above our heads, and one of the staff members from Barnes and Noble brought out a ladder, and this was about 10 years ago, and like climbed up on the ladder to like, and we didn't know what they were doing, and David just yells up at him, "Don't jump, Amazon's a fad." It cracked me up. I tell people that story all the time. So let's talk about our local bookstores. Let's talk about how important it is to support places like Let's Play Books. I don't know exactly how we can talk about that other than we're preaching to the choir here, those of us who had joined, but I think it's wonderful that we have a store such as Let's Play Books here in the Lehigh Valley. The library is so happy to partner with them, and we just always want to encourage everyone to do their shopping at places like that, because there's so much more than a place to get a book. They're the kind of place that makes our communities better, and the kind of places that, I don't know, make our lives worth living, right? I mean, I really mean it. I think that since this past year of being locked in and locked down and so on, like I know here at the library, when we open the doors in and let people come back in and browse the shelves, like there's some sort of magic reawakened in people, when you were like, wow, this, the kind of thing you take for granted is now maybe not such a given. So that's just, I just want to say how happy we are at the library and how happy I am as a writer to be part of this festival with Let's Play Books.
When the library was closed at the beginning of all of this, there were people sitting all around outside using your Wi-Fi, and I thought it was just really cool that you had that service going.
Yes, that was really interesting to see. Here and at our Southside location too, it became a way to keep people connected. There are a lot of people who who need the assumption is that everyone has access to these things, but that's of course not not the truth. Do you have you started to plan to do like in-person events again, or like or is the book tour going to be all virtual, or what's next with you, Michael?
At the moment it's just virtual, but I'm eager to get out there. I mean, it's hard to know what the science is. I had COVID last March, luckily a very mild case, and I've had the vaccine for number 1, and I get the number 2 on Monday, so I'm very excited, and I'm very happy when people get the vaccine. I've been trying to celebrate them because it's a big deal, and I'm looking forward to maybe doing some school events that are outside. I think that would be, as the weather gets a little warmer. I mean, we could do some of these things out in the yard. Maybe we can do some bookstore events outside somewhere. This business in itself is basically a word of mouth kind of thing. We can put up all the ads we want, and we can work our social media all we want. But the truth is that I have found that what really gets the job done about letting people know what you do is talking to them. And without these book events, it's a struggle. So I don't know. I'm not eager to put anybody in danger, but I am ready to stand out in the field with a bullhorn and tell you about my book. Yeah.
Yes, that sounds great. I was just reading David, one of the attendees was talking about how much they enjoy you visiting their Spring Garden Elementary here in Bethlehem. So they're looking forward to having you back. So the librarian from Spring Garden who recently retired was my school librarian when I was a kid, and I did a presentation there. Nancy McKicka, yeah. And when I spoke there, I mean, I'm like I got a white beard and kids think I'm 100 years old. And then I said, Nancy or Mrs. McKicka was my librarian when I was a kid. And they were like, heads exploded. They were like, how is that? How is she still alive? When you were a kid, that was 100 years ago. We have some questions from some of our audience members that we'll get to shortly. I wanted to ask you, Gae, if you have a favorite bookstore in Long Island that you like that you can recommend, and if you're planning some events out there anytime soon.
We have an awesome bookstore called Book Review in Huntington, which is pretty well known. We get famous people there all the time. But I am closest with my local Huntington library. And we actually have, because 7 Clues to Home centers around a scavenger hunt, and because I was doing the, desperate author releasing in the middle of COVID Google search, I learned that May 24th is National Scavenger Hunt Day, and there is a National Scavenger Hunt Day that exists. And I teamed up with our library and the merchants in our town. We have like a downtown area with restaurants and stores, and we're doing such a fun event. And the most heartwarming thing is that the merchants are so excited about it. We're doing a hunt for a good book scavenger hunt throughout the entire town. And we're hiding library books in the windows, as well as teeny little objects that have to do with the story. So Harriet the Spy and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and whatever. And for the entire weekend of May 22nd through May 24th, the kids who register will run around town with their families looking in the store windows and finding the books and finding the objects. And I went around merchant to merchant because so many of our stores closed because of COVID and a year of quarantine, and new stores came in, and it kind of blew my mind, the reception we got from the store owners and fancy jewelry stores that want to put books and crappy little objects in their windows for the weekend so that the kids will come around to their stores. So that I'm pretty excited about. It's been a really emotional, warm, fuzzy thing to kind of plan it with the librarian. That's the Huntington Public Library. So, and then I just got invited to do my first in-person school thing in 2022. So they said, are you doing in person by then? And I said, I hope so.
Yes, I hope so. Good. What's the date again on the Scavenger Hunt Day?
The National Scavenger Hunt Day is May 24th, which happens to be a Monday. I don't know why they'd make it on a Monday. So we're doing this whole weekend. And I've actually offered up, if you know any librarians, they can have my planning documents. They can take all of my work I did and go do it in their own town, because it's such a lovely collaboration between the stores and the library. And we're promoting reading and we're promoting fun, and I'm ordering no plastic, so it won't be cheap little plastic toys that then lie around the house and fill the landfills. So I think it will be really nice. And like I said, the merchants were just so awesome about it. So hopefully there'll be some really fun stories to come out of that, because I plan to just walk around town over the weekend watching the kids.
Are any of the prizes beach rocks?
No, but I can do that.
No,
it's very cute. So what we're doing is, so that we don't waste anything, all the objects that are in the windows, we're going to then collect them and make goodie bags with them for the kids. So they'll actually be taking the found objects home with them after we clean up from the scavenger hunt.
I think we do have some librarians on the call here. So if they want to get those materials, how do they find them?
They can reach out to me on Twitter at Gaepol, Gaepol, or at my email, g.polisner@gmail.com. And they're all in Google Docs, and I'll just give them the Google Docs link.
Sounds good. We will connect. We'll connect you that way. Michael, we have a very specific question that is regarding the Sister Grimm that only you can answer.
Okay.
This is from Teresa's daughter.
All right.
Can the fairy tale characters ever die from old age? The
Yes.
characters in the Sister Grimm.
Yes.
Yes?
Aging is purely up to the ever afters. They can get older if they want to. And sometimes there's a reason to do that. And if they choose to die from old age, they have that ability to do that as well. So yes, they can die of old age, but it is in their hands.
Good answer. Good to know. Can they become younger?
No, once you age, you can't go back. Yeah,
I was asking for David.
yeah. That only works with like.
That is a great example of creativity, though. Someone asking that question about can they grow younger. That's anyone can just come out with just an amazing thought that could lead to anything.
I think that comes from like the 5th book. There's a character named Sleeping Beauty. No, it's Cinderella, who is married to a human being, and he's been getting older and trying to find a way to make himself younger so he can stay with this beautiful woman that he loves. And when she realizes what he's up to, she spontaneously ages so that she will be the same age as him. And they can have that life together. Yeah, I think that's where that's coming from.
Yes, and Julia, who is one of our librarians here, has read the books a lot of times, and so she said that's so sad but so romantic. So I agree. Thank you, Julia. Teresa was asking a question about sort of like nuts and bolts publishing stuff. So I'll just read it here. So you talked about it being a business and how things change from the idea stage to when they're published. Can you talk about some more instances when this has happened? How do you object to the changes? How often do the changes make the story better? So from when you bring something to it, agent or editor or publisher, and then, sometimes the changes presumably are welcomed and sometimes not. So I don't know if any of you have examples. I have some from my career, but I'll let you answer.
An example just to balance out what I talked about before. Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. I was inspired. I had a friend who had children 5 years apart, 3 children. So I wanted to write about a boy who's about to start high school when his mom gets pregnant. I wrote the whole book as a journal. It's really letters, epistles. So he's writing to his unborn brother. And my editor read it and said, no, the journal is too distancing. You need to add a narrative. And he was absolutely right. And that really made the difference in the book, though, of course, publishing being a business, she left that publisher right after the book came out and orphaned me and went to another publisher. And then I did another book for her and she left that publisher. So we're back to publishing as a business.
Yeah. Yeah. Gae, do you have something?
I don't really have, I mostly have had sort of, if a book is going to sell, an editor is interested in it, the only thing I can really think of that I've had is somebody asked me to age a character, could I age the character up or down?
Was it a fairy?
No, realistic fiction. So, really makes a difference to them in that regard. But, and I know you were joking. But other than that, I haven't had really instances, my battles are more in the small, line edit arguments or copy edit arguments where, in Summer of Letting Go, there's a whole thing that centers around a sand dollar. And all through the book, there's a poem that she reads that has a sand dollar in it, and the sand dollar is on the cover and it factors. And the copy editor kept changing it to changing it to exoskeleton and telling me that it wasn't a shell. And I was like, I know it's not a shell, but I am not going to have a 16-year-old girl keep calling it an exoskeleton. So my battles have been rather small. But
I do find that sometimes my editors will copy edit dialogue, and I'm like, these kids, that's how they talk. Like, I know they're not right, but that's also how they talk. Like, they're not going to be correct. I think you spoke to this a little bit, Michael. One of the people in the audience was wondering, the third Finn book is the final Finn book?
That's what it's planned. I only wanted to do 3, and I've had the best time with it. I have to admit, I'd like to do more, but I don't know. It's like it is a business. COVID, destroyed the first one. So there has to be a financial benefit to making more of these for not only the publisher but for me. And so I think it's a conversation to be had. But I'm also always eager to just move on to the next thing. I've got a lot of stories in me I want to tell, and I don't, it's like I was telling somebody earlier today, the secret to life is knowing when to leave the party. And you want to go before anybody can ask you to leave. And so I'm always eager to leave when you want a little bit more.
When is that book coming out though? That's the other question.
The third one will be out a year from now. Yeah,
about a year from now. That's from one of our participants who's, I'm not sure if she's a teacher or a librarian, but speaking, her students are asking. So there are fans out there who are looking forward to this next one. So that's always nice to hear. Yeah, that's cool. And then another one of our
jump in.
Yes.
Just to get some of the questions that were asked earlier, just because I know a couple people have been waiting on some answers, probably pretty eagerly. So I've got one from Julia, who I believe is an employee of Josh over at the library.
That's correct.
Michael, this is specifically for you.
Oh.
Are you considering going back to the Sisters Grimm universe? I bet there's a lot more cool tales that you could tell there.
This is something my son is constantly hammering me about, like, do more. There's more stories there, but the door to Fairyport Landing isn't quite as open as it used to be. So the characters, may not want me to come back, to be honest. And again, I mean, I'm curious about doing more, and I definitely try to leave myself an escape hatch if I want to jump back into it on most of the things I write. But I think for now I'm gonna say I'll never say never, but right now I don't have any plans to write any more.
All right, thank you. Okay, I've got one kind of for all of you guys from Sarah. This is actually a really fun question that I'm interested to see. What is your favorite font to write in or type in?
I started on a manual typewriter. It was a Royal Standard. I can put a finger through a cinder block. I wrote 5 novels, so I think it's Elite. Is the original typewriter font? And then I used WordPerfect under DOS even after Windows came for many, many, many years until I got dragged away from it. And now I'm really boring. I use Times New Roman or Arial. And sometimes I use Comic Sans because everyone says don't use it. I'm kidding.
That's what made me laugh. The thought that so I'm late to the publishing game. I'm actually an attorney and had a whole other career. And I'm just 10 years published, right? This month, next month. But I remember like just being horrified because I realized that my first manuscripts I ever submitted out, I think in Comic Sans. And if you ever want to reveal that you don't know what you're doing as a writer, send out a manuscript written in Comic Sans because you like the font. So if you're an aspiring writer, stick to Times New Roman.
I try to write all my books in
Times Roman. Oops.
In what, Michael?
In Wingdings.
In Wingdings.
Yeah.
I like to cause I like the editors to have to work for it a little bit. So it's all Wingdings.
Anyone else type 2 spaces after a period and just use search and replace afterward?
I refuse to ever give up that second space.
Yeah,
I've gotten points off my essays for doing that, actually, because that's how I was taught to type.
Yeah, I've been forcing myself to stop doing it. so,
Really?
yeah.
You're gonna ruin it for the rest of us who refused.
The one thing I've noticed lately, and maybe you guys can help me, is people like when I was growing up, you used a and an for whatever the word was after, you know. So if it was like a cat or, you know, but I'm seeing people using an all the time.
You know, I think sometimes that happens when they're revising and they be like an apple, but then they add delicious and they don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's just a theory. Just a theory.
I thought maybe I was just going crazy and they were changing something that I didn't know anything about. Yeah. All right. Good.
Rules are for losers.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a garbly goop
Agreed.
language
Yeah.
made up of words from 1,000 other languages. And
We
we like
learned
to pretend there are rules.
There's a book right now called, I'm reading the Semicolon, which is talking about how all of the grammar rules are arbitrary and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
Not that one though. That and that's so we gotta have stand. We gotta stick to something. We
Yeah.
gotta draw a
Some
line-
standards.
we gotta draw a line somewhere.
We have the nerve to complain when people can't learn our language.
yeah, right.
It's
We've
not.
got a couple more questions that we're going to try to get through here. We've got one from Lucy.
Hey, Lucy.
It says, yes, has the pandemic given you any ideas for new books?
no, I don't want to write the same book 7,000 other people are going to write.
Yeah. I feel bad for the kids in about a year and a half where every single book is about the pandemic and wearing masks. And I'm just like, you know, if anything publishing does wrong over and over and over is following the lead of some one idea. And I swear every single one of these books, it'll be like Harry Potter, but everybody's wearing a mask. You know, you know, I think, honestly, I think the kids have had enough of it and they lived through it, and we don't need to force this down their books. In fact, the next few books I write are literally going to be so full of joy and hope in it that are so unbecoming of me and not realistic of who I am. But I'm going to still write these happy books because the kids need them. Please, my fellow writers, do not write about COVID. Just don't. Don't write about Trump. Don't write about the how they bungled this. Just don't do it. We need a break.
Amen.
Amen.
I agree on that one.
Yes.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. Again from Sarah, how do you put yourself in the right headspace to write? Any routines, silence, background noise, anything? Let's put Gae on the spot for this
I was
one.
gonna say, I just keep, do you notice the blank stare that comes over me when anybody else?
I saw the facial expression.
I find for me that I'm either in the right headspace on a given day or I'm not. That's at least in the winter. And that is going to change any day now because I am an avid open water swimmer. And I get into my headspace by getting into the water. And my biggest problem is that I am a genius in the water and I have yet to figure out how to get that genius back to dry land again. But usually when I'm stuck or not knowing where to go, my story ideas and my unstuckedness comes from being out in the water.
All right, David, let's hear it.
Yeah.
Me? If I'm working on something, I will read what I wrote the day before, which again is very interesting because when I started writing with a typewriter, you couldn't really do that. You would just type the whole thing and then maybe type it one more time because it was a lot of work. Now, with the word processor, actually, a kid once said, "What's a word processor?" At a school talk. With the writing programs, you can go back and go over it. So I will read everything I wrote the day before and use that to leap start me. If I'm trying to find something new, I'll generally every day just write some brainstorming ideas. I'm really big believer in what if questions. I have like hundreds and hundreds of them that I've done every writing day. I would just write one, and I have so many I can always look through for something that inspires me. Or I'll go for a swim with Gae.
Crutcher's got dibs on that.
Yeah. I have ADD, which means any little thing can distract me and will. So I have discovered that I write better in noisy places.
Huh.
It's I don't understand it, but I've written almost all of my books in a Starbucks, and then when COVID hit, I didn't have that noise, so I found an app. I'm looking for it now. Oh, it's called Ambient Cafe. It just makes coffee shop noises, like chatter and clinking glasses, and like you can hear the door opening and closing. The weird thing is like when people talk about like how they write to music, I'm always like, oh wow, I wish I could do that. That derails me. If there's a TV on, it derails me. But just chatter and busyness seems to counteract the busyness in my head. So that's how I get it done.
That's interesting. Who invented that app? Coffee,
Yeah,
coffee
somebody
house
else did.
chatter.
Yeah.
I'm totally a fan. There's an online like ambient noise that makes Hogwarts library noise, and that's what I used to study. Is the Hogwarts library, the cafe, or the cafe? Wow, clinking of spoons and whatnot in the dining hall, or the sound of magic being cat. It's so fun. It works.
I read something about the virtual public library reading room for people who miss it, and it's just a guy coughing, just some guy clearing his throat like a real wet one for just
Yeah.
a lot of hours. Hey,
You guys should have one.
That's timely.
A librarian is helping somebody with their resume. I'd like to hear that one.
a librarian getting berated by someone who can't remember their email password.
Yeah.
We do get that a lot too. So
We've got one more question here from Julia. What genres are you guys hoping to experiment with in future titles?
Ooh.
Let's start with Michael on this one.
I would like to write a Western. That's not something you see a lot these days, and I'm always trying to find something everybody else isn't doing. So I think that would be fun. I'm very eager not to write another time travel book because it broke my heart how complicated it got. But I think that would be fun. And then I'm trying to think of like the things. I'm thinking about working on something that's kind of like an anti-Mary Poppins. I think that's been kicking around in my head lately. So
that has a lot of potential, I would say. That sounds good. I'm sold.
I'm thinking about writing a how to write book because there aren't any of those.
Yeah.
That's good. I could use one, David.
Yeah.
I'll read yours and trust it implicitly.
Don't wait for it.
Right.
You could probably come up with some sort of pun about semicolon, but we won't go into it.
Semicolon is the guy who drives a big truck.
In France, Germany. Where's Cologne? Oh, Germany. Okay.
Semicolon.
I was taught
The brand muffin.
I had a gym teacher for geography, so I don't do the blue questions in Trivial Pursuit.
Well, with that, we've actually got one really nice comment in our Q&A that I'm just going to finish up with here because we've got a pretty hard out in 2 minutes from Lauren that says, no question here, just thank you all for entertaining my students and providing great books which enrich their lives.
Oh,
Thank you for that one.
That's beautiful. That's perfect.
And thank you,
Well,
Maddie, for doing this.
Yeah, Maddie,
I'm sorry for the
take
on the spot here. I apologize to everyone for my awkwardness tonight.
You're
But
great.
thank you to everybody for joining us. And I really hope that we can see some of you guys in the next session, which is a different registration link. But please, please, please come. We really want to see some faces here. Thank you to all of our authors here tonight, including Josh Berk, because he's an author, but also our moderator.
Thank you,
So
Josh.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
yes,
both.
Chuck,
Do a really cringy everybody waving as we click the end meeting button.
Yes,
So
and go-
good
go
night,
listen to
everybody.
Chuck.
Thank you so much. Any last words?
go listen to
Thank
Chuck
you.
Wendig. He's a genius of our times.
Yay.
I'm registered. I'm
everybody.
going.